the interview room, Mr. Mark Tinsley. Counselor, Mark, how are you, buddy?
Good. Good evening, Chris. I thought you were talking about somebody else first. I knew you were going to say Eric Bland any second, but
well, he was on the tip of my tongue, by the way, but I figured you're going to get higher ratings than him tonight anyway, so that ought to be a good thing. Fast. How's Mark doing, and everything falling into place for you?
My life is good. Most days it's like drinking from a fire hydrant with a 10-foot hose, but my life is very good. Today's my 1-year anniversary to my beautiful wife, Stephanie.
Now that Mallory's case is, there's a date set for the 14th, right?
That's correct. Yep. It's been complicated and delayed by a number of factors, not the least of which is the double murder trial that just finished. We're going to go in August. For sure we're going to go. And, I think the only person in the courtroom that wants the case over more than me is the judge. So we're going to go.
And how are those judges assigned, Mark? I mean, in terms of who presides over those types of cases?
This judge was assigned by the Supreme Court, sort of on its own. Unbeknownst to me, after I filed the suit, two of the local judges, there were two resident judges in the 14th Circuit, and they both recused themselves from the case. And I assume one of those judges at the time was the chief administrative judge, contacted the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court assigned Judge Hall. I didn't know Judge Hall before this, but he's a very good judge. I'm very pleased that he's been over it.
Had you known Judge Newman before that particular trial?
Yeah, I've known Judge Newman for, I feel like, close to 20 years. I tried a case in front of Judge Newman and got a real good result probably 15 years ago. And after he sentenced Alec, I went back, and his wife was in his chambers, and he told his wife about that case I'd tried in front of him. And so he's very, they couldn't have picked a better judge to preside over that case. And I told him that he was perfect in every way in his temperament. I asked him why he wasn't that good when I tried my case in front of him, but I'm kidding. He was really good.
He's being called America's judge now.
Yeah, he called him the way he saw him, and he would let both sides have their say as long as they wanted to. I thought he was he let them say more than I would have probably at times, but then he made his ruling, and he stuck to it, and he was consistent. And I think from a lawyer's perspective, he let the lawyers try their case. They might not have liked every ruling, but he let everybody do pretty much what they wanted to do. And but he controlled the show. He was first class in every respect. His temperament was the best of everything. And I can imagine there's a lot of pressure in that spectacle, that circus environment. And it was a circus environment. If you were in the courtroom, it was kind of nuts, but he slow and steady.
I could not believe that Harpootlian was allowed just to walk anywhere he wanted in that courtroom at any time. And I kind of struck me one time when I saw him walk in front of, the solicitor and the expert witness during her testimony. And I was like, holy cow. And I've been in a lot of courtrooms, sitting at the table as an investigator, but I'd never seen anything like it. Is that normal?
I think several times it looked to me he was walking around to get a look at whatever demonstrative exhibit they were talking about. And that would be normal. I mean, you would typically stand at the end of the jury box so you can see what she's demonstrating to the jury and what she's pointing out. That was very normal. A few times he walked up. I saw him a couple of times walk up and say something to Jim Griffin. He's Dick. I've known Dick for a while too. And
was it to throw the rhythm off, do you think?
Dick told me before I got on the stand, he said, we focus group this, and the jury just doesn't buy the financial aspect. That's, well, I hope you can get your money back.
Yeah, I love
So
it.
I don't know if walking around the courtroom was every time was trying to throw it off, but Dick definitely would try to throw your rhythm off.
And I hear he's a fine lawyer and he's a fine man. That's so.
He provided a lot of comic relief, and it would seem like to me when he would make jokes, oftentimes about himself, but he would make a joke and there would be a response.
So just out of curiosity, during Alex's trial, Mallory's father, I want to ask you this question. Well, he was in the court for sentencing. There was some contact between him and John Marvin. Can you comment about that?
Yeah. They couldn't find a parking place. So we were sort of the last ones coming into the courthouse, I thought. And as a result, the seats got taken up towards the front, and the Beach family sat towards the back of the courtroom. And John Marvin and Buster and maybe all of the Murdoch family that was there came in at the very end. And so he said that he saw John Marvin come in, they made eye contact, and then John Marvin sat down. And then after Alec was sentenced, John Marvin made a point to come back to the back of the courtroom because they were waiting on me to get out of the judges' chambers. And he said that John Marvin said he didn't see him back there. And Philip felt like he had seen him, and it almost felt like he was politicking in a way. And so he just put up his hands and didn't shake his hand. I think that Philip feels like that John Marvin was helpful with some of the things that happened the night of the boat crash or the morning of the boat crash. I don't know, other than communicating back and forth. I don't know that he was, but there's still some hard feelings.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about Alex's the trial there for a sec. You're on the witness stand for 2 days. What was that like?
So I was in Mexico when they first got to me, and I couldn't get back. And so when the judge said, "Well, we'll wait on Mr. Tinsley to get back on Monday," so there was a little bit of pressure in just having held them up. Which wasn't my intent. They thought they were going to get to me later that week. And so, but there was a lot of pressure to bring sort of all of this financial stuff together and explain it, why Alec believed that this was the only option. It's not something that makes sense, I think, to normal people, but he knew that if he were the victim of a vigilante, then the lawsuit would be over. I think he believed that he had pacified Jeannie Seckinger, done whatever he had been doing for the last 15 years, and it had skated past that. He was working on getting a loan from Palmetto State Bank. We now know this. I didn't know it at the time. So he was going to be able to return the Ferris fees. And, I think in his mind, this was the linchpin to getting it away with everything. And I don't know how you get to that point, but so there was a lot of pressure in making sure that Judge Newman understood why these crimes, these financial crimes, the things that were happening had brought so much pressure on Alec and were an issue for him, and that would drive him to do this.
I don't think the general public understands, the totality of, what all that was going on. What were you going to say? I'm sorry.
Well, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I think you're exactly right. Just look at it from the perspective of where he was before they charged him. He's facing 800 years worth of financial crimes. It's going to be, most likely they're going to 3-strike him with 3 felonies, and he'll get life without parole on the financial crimes. he would have known that was over. He would have known his law license was gone, and that this position of power would be over, and then this mar on his family's name. I think that was probably a lesser consideration for Alec, knowing Alec like I think I know Alec. He was only really concerned about Alec. The family name would have been the last consideration, but he would have known the consequences. And, I referenced Danny Henderson. Danny Henderson was is a partner in the firm. He was acting as Alec's personal counsel throughout the Beach trial. He wasn't a lawyer in the case, but he was intimately involved in every aspect. And, I even demonstrated to the jury and told the jury that guy in the back seat of the police car who reaches up and squeezes Alec's shoulder while he's crying, that's the guy. That's the guy that Alec was worried about, more so than he was worried about me, the tiger on his tail. I mean, Danny Henderson would have reviewed the financial records before I got them. Mm-hmm. And he would have known that, these lawyers only get one big lump once a year. They don't get it throughout. There shouldn't be all these transfers. And when you look at the bank records, I mean, it's pretty obvious. He wasn't really hiding what he was doing.
How did it stay under the umbrella for so long in terms of underground? I mean, you're right. I mean, when you look at it and you hear it now, you go, well, what was going on?
Well, the bank was helping him. Russell Lafitte's been convicted six different indictments, felony indictments in federal court. He was convicted in November. Most of those were conspiracy, and so he had help. He had help, and then once he figured out how to manipulate the system to keep it under the radar, he was a well-oiled stealing machine by that point, and knew how to do it.
Was it just the name, or was it he was just good at manipulating?
Oh, he is a gifted liar, and a master manipulator. No, there's no question about it. I mean, I don't. You read his emails, you read his text. They're full of grammatical errors, misspellings. I mean, he is probably genius level manipulator, but he's not a banking expert. He's not a legal expert. I mean, in the Russell Lafitte trial, one of the prosecutors made a point of pointing out that Alec always had to have somebody like Russell Lafitte to help him with the details. Ronnie Crosby, who most of the big cases, Ronnie Crosby was involved in handling the technical aspects. Ronnie is a fantastic lawyer, mm-hmm. and Alec was dealing with the people. And so there's sort of a, not by design, a Chinese wall in terms of the division of responsibilities. You're handling the case. He's handling the people. The money comes in. You think everything's going because, for the most part, this is a self-regulating system. I've settled your case, Chris, for $100. You're going to pay me a third, and you're due $67 or whatever it is. And so you ought to be able to know that I haven't given you your money but he figured out how to do it. And it was interesting to me that some of the lawyers even testified that the people still liked Alec. Some of his financial victims still had nice things to say about him after he'd stolen from them.
Just out of curiosity, did you feel at any time that you sensed Mallory and that you were speaking for her?
Well, I knew Paul and Maggie, and this is not, I mean, I've seen comments people have said, that I'm seeking my 15 minutes of fame. There's nothing in me that relishes this or wants to be associated with the murder of these two people. Whatever their faults were, whatever they did wrong, they didn't deserve what happened to them.
Right.
And it was the most heinous to me. The reason I think that they should have sought the death penalty is I gave him the option of a payment plan. mean, he had $3.5 million in May of 19 in his pocket that he had just stolen from the Satterfields. I mean, it's in his pocket. He's actively stealing money. He steals money continuously from 19 until he's caught. And you know what? This is a stupid thing to say. I understand it, but what rational person, if you're actively getting away with something, doesn't take those stolen funds and buy your way out of this, versus you want the money and you decide that the option is to kill your wife and son. It's just, it
Yeah,
really speaks
I
to
mean, he was
just
pretty
what a
much
monster I
running.
think he is.
Yeah, no, he was pretty much running almost a Ponzi scheme if we look for a description of it somewhat. I mean, you're right. He should have stole from Peter to pay Paul, just to kind of keep things moving in the right direction. But you're right. Something changed. Something changed.
Something changed. Originally, early on, that's what he was doing. He was stealing. He would, his debt with the bank would go up $4 or $5 million. He would steal. He would pay it down. The debt would immediately go back up, and so he was just sort of moving the money from here to there, and like you said, robbing from Peter to pay Paul. But after the boat crash, he's liquidating these funds, and he's actively cashing these checks. I mean, I've seen the 384 checks or 426 checks to Eddie Smith, whatever it is. Those things they're made out to E.W. Smith, Eddie Smith, Ed Smith, every iteration of Eddie Smith that you can come up with, and they look to me like they're signed by different people. I know he had a number of people that were cashing checks for him for money. I think you heard testimony from one person who was cashing checks, but I think that's what Eddie Smith was doing as well for the most part. He didn't pay Eddie Smith $2.5 million for drugs. That's for sure.
Oh yeah, I had a laugh when that came up. That he's paying his drug dealer with checks. I'm like, yeah, sure. My personal opinion is this addiction problem here was hocus pocus. Yeah,
I agree. It was, and we saw it at the end, right? I mean, you saw him talk about, I was addicted, I was paranoid. I was paranoid. At one point, I was headed to Nashville, and he was on the stand, and I texted Creighton Waters, and I said, he just said he was paranoid about everything, but he wasn't paranoid about me or the law firm. He's paranoid about cars that are going by, but he's not paranoid about the two people who are about to uncover and pull the thread on this thing and unravel it all. But no, I think that's always what it was. I mean, the roadside shooting, the BS life insurance, which there is none, all of that was just a spin to, and I mean, I remember right before they arrest Eddie Smith, Jim Griffin is still saying, "Oh no, he was shot. It was a shooter. He didn't have anything to do with it." I think into Saturday, but by Sunday we knew they had Eddie Smith.
The moment you heard about that, tell me about what you thought the moment you heard about the shooting. That's not on my list, by the way. I'm just thinking out loud.
It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I don't remember all the questions are on your list anyway, so it's fine. I was I had just come from Nashville, and we were in the car, and I got a call, and if the call didn't simultaneously tell me that the deputies on the scene were saying there's something going on, it was within seconds after that. So I mean, I don't even think he's in the helicopter yet. And that, he was loaded. Some people say, why was he loaded in the helicopter? It's standard protocol. If there's a gunshot wound to the head, they dispatch the helicopter. And so that didn't mean anything. Within an hour or two, I think I knew that he'd been fired from the law firm. And then shortly thereafter, they released whatever statement from him. At least that's my recollection. But no, I in the week before, the rumor on the street is that the Attorney General's office had impaneled the Colleton County grand jury, and I believe Alec thought he was about to be indicted, and that was the exigent circumstance that pushed him to that point at that time.
Do you think he had contemplated taking out cousin Eddie and throwing it all on him? No, no.
No, it was this was I think he really thought that he was going to get away with it always, and so that was a way to say, see, somebody really is after me and my family, and I didn't shoot my family. Somebody's after me, and so no.
Yeah, so it was
that might have been a better plan.
Mm-hmm.
He probably thinks he should have done that now, but that's not what happened.
Right. Do we even know if Eddie actually fired the gun, or is that and that he just missed? I mean, we don't even know what the totality of those circumstances are, because I don't think he's ever come to the front and said.
Dick a number of times said there was an entrance and an exit wound. I subpoenaed Alec's medical records sort of out of the gate right afterwards. He's probably still in Atlanta when I send a subpoena to Savannah for his medical records, which they tried to stop. They tried to keep me from getting those. And it doesn't look like a bullet wound, any bullet wound I've ever seen. I still don't believe that they shot him. I don't know what he did. I don't know if he hit him in the head with a hammer, ice pick. I don't know. I don't know what he did.
Yeah.
I don't buy it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just even looking at some of the photographs of, the bandage wrapped around his head and stuff.
Well, head wounds bleed a lot. So, there was a fair amount of blood in that bandage. That I don't think that really means anything. But yeah, I don't know. I do think it was significant that he took his health insurance card and he made sure he had his health insurance card with him when they did whatever they were going to do. So there's a possibility. That's the first time I thought he could have actually just been stupid enough to try to graze one off his thick skull. But yeah, I don't buy it.
Well, yeah. And
not with the 38.
No, not. Yeah. I will find out at some point. I'm sure there's some inmate will leak that into the environment one day. So let's talk about your testimony when, you told of an encounter where Alec tried to basically come up on you, right, and intimidate you.
Yeah.
Because right. Tell us about that. What else can you add to that story? I know you had a little limited testimony there, but set the stage for how that thing all went down.
So every year there's this trial lawyers, a bunch of plaintiffs' lawyers together in Hilton Head, and I can't remember when everybody going out to dinner, they go out in large groups. And
sure.
I don't remember whether this was before supper or when everybody starts to come back. My recollection is it's before. And there's two reasons for that. But so I see Alec sees me, sort of beelines across, and it's still a big deal. This is August. I filed suit against him shortly after the boat crash in February, and he gets right up in my face and he says, "Hey, Bo, what's this? I've been hearing about what you've been saying." And what he was talking about was the fact that I'd been telling his lawyer that he was going to have to pay. He's going to have to pay personally. For a long time, I think he thought, you heard a couple of times during the trial, somebody said maybe Ronnie Crosby or Mark Ball, a friendly lawsuit, but knew about a friendly lawsuit. I think he thought he was just in it for venue purposes or for some other friendly purpose. And that was never the case. And he didn't like it. He was upset by it. And he was letting me know that he was upset about it. And I told him, if you don't think I can burn your house down, you're wrong. And and I had shown John Tiller. There were lots of videos of Paul with alcohol, lots of videos of Paul without drinking alcohol with Maggie and Alec. And I had all those. I had sat with his lawyer, John Tiller, and shown him those videos. And, there's a video of Alec receiving a Jello shot from 17-year-old Morgan Dowdy that I had. And it was, there's some damning videos I've recently seen. I don't know if it's a TikTok video or somebody's posted where some advertisement that Alec did where a video is worth 1,000 words or something, and he really believes in it. And and so I had 100,000-word videos, and they all pointed to the fact that alcohol was a big part of everyday life in their family, and they condoned it, they promoted it, and it meant some serious liability for him. And it was the kind of thing that Greg Parker, who was obsessed with the fact that this was a friendly lawsuit, in my opinion, that they just were looking for and wanted. So that's what I was telling him. Later that night, we just so happened to be in the same restaurant, and I was out with my partner and some other lawyers and Alec and my recollection, Alec and Buster, and they came up and they spoke to everybody, but they didn't speak to me. And I told one of the lawyers at the table at that time about our encounter. And I thought it was interesting, when he denied that it ever happened, adamantly denied that it ever happened when he testified. When I watched the video and I said what I said he said and what I said, I saw him lean over to Jim Griffin. You could go back and watch it. And he says, that's not what he said, or that ain't what he said. That's the way I read his lips. That ain't what he said.
I saw that.
And I told one of the lawyers, I said, well, I've been lying about this before the murders for years, because I've consistently told this story now since August of 2019 and to a number of people. So it's okay.
Well, the truth is a constant, and you cannot beat around that. And Alec just found out what that means. So, oops. What was the reaction of everybody at the table when he walked away and you told him?
It was very tense anyway. Everything was sort of, so no, I mean, just, that was awkward.
That's going to leave a mark.
That was what that was awkward. And then I explained what I'd said earlier. And so it made a little more sense. There was a lot of attention on the fact that I've practiced law with a number of the partners in that firm. I've handled tried cases with those lawyers. I've said it, I'll continue to say it. They're some of the best lawyers that I've ever had the pleasure of having worked with, which is part of the reason why I don't buy for 1 second the drug that he was taking. And if you do the math, even if we said $30,000 a week and they're $80 a pill, I mean, it's a tremendous, it's 4 to 6, 80. If he only sleeps 5 hours a day, it's still like 4 an hour. He can't do that.
No.
And you can't steal tens of millions of dollars from some of the sharpest lawyers and manipulate everybody. And I mean, can you imagine imagine, I mean, the problem with a lie is it's such an insidious thing, right? It's like cancer. You got these tentacles and you don't know where it's going to trip you up. He's told thousands of lies. He's got thousands of balls in the air and he's juggling them all. And you want us to believe that he is actively taking so many opioids that he's out of control and doesn't remember in his period. No, it's no way. No way.
Yeah, I thought that was a tactical error to go down that route as a defense, or at least even introduce it as a possibility, because I agree with you 1,000%. There was, it just wouldn't have made it didn't make any sense. And even to this day, we're still talking about it. The jury didn't buy it. As he said, what webs we weave. He knew exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
When he was doing it. Yeah.
What web? What a tangled web we weave when we practice to deceive. I mean,
You can't make that up. right? That came right out
No.
of him. So, in your opinion, um, why Maggie? Why Maggie? I mean, why Maggie? I mean, I know all the pressure's building with Paul because of his conduct. Go ahead.
If you recall from my test, this is the why Mark Tinsley thanks Maggie. Okay. And there could be another reason. But when I found out that I had cancer in the fall of 20, so the murders are in June of 21. And in November, I know that I'm going to be gone to Florida for 4.5 months, beginning in January, and I'll come back mid-April. I also know that John Tiller, Alec's lawyer, has pancreatic cancer, which is generally a 1-year life sentence, right? And so, and John knows that, and John wants to finish the case, and he wants to end this case, to try this case, this be his last case. And so there's a sense of urgency that we get this done. And but you have the pandemic, so the courts are shut down. They're just starting to come back online in the fall of 20. If the county has a COVID plan, and Hampton County didn't have a COVID plan, so we didn't have terms of court. I was leaving for 4 months, and there was the issue was whether or not the case was going to remain in Hampton, where Alec is from and reigned, or go to Beaufort, where you have a lot of people who don't have these strong connections. At least, Alec doesn't know all the people like he would in Hampton. And so I'd made up my mind I was going to go to Beaufort. And I told you, I had all of these videos. Well, one of the first things that I did when I got involved in the case was I went to Maggie's Facebook, and Maggie's Facebook was just picture and video after picture and video of Paul with alcohol, Paul in the boat with alcohol, Paul loading the coolers, Paul sitting on the sandbar with beer between his legs, and all of Paul with Morgan and Alec and Maggie at their house, and he's got a beer in his hand, and videos from out to dinner, and there were photographs that she had clicked on, so there wasn't any question that had she seen them, she liked them, and so I had screenshotted those, and I had those things, and I'd shown them to John Tiller, and so in November I sent request to admit, which I started telling Creighton Waters about this, the request to admit, because I think this is the why Maggie. Those photographs clearly documented that Maggie knew about Paul's drinking. And let's assume that I don't have any evidence of Alec knowledge of that, because the claim really is a negligent entrustment claim. That is, that he has a propensity to drink alcohol to excess. You nonetheless entrusted him with a vehicle. In this case, it's a boat. So I sent requests to admit to Alec in November to admit that everything that Maggie knew, that all of the things that by then had been sanitized from her Facebook account, were imputed to him for purposes of liability. And what I really was doing was extending an olive branch to Alec as a way to because I knew Maggie was upset about it. You heard some testimony from Blanca about how upset she was about the boat crash in the case.
Yeah.
And so here's a way to protect your wife, this person that you love more than anything, keep her from being sued. Well, he denied them in December of 20. He denied those. And so what that does to me as the lawyer on the other side is it then forces me to have to sue Maggie, because I can't run the risk that I can't get all of this evidence in because it's not relevant, because, you and your wife, Karen, Karen knows for sure, but how do we know that just because Karen knows? I was really shocked that he did that. And by then, Greg Parker people had done extensive research into Alec's assets and he was just consumed by what Alec had and all of these different properties. So I knew that Moselle was exclusively in Maggie's name. Now I wasn't thinking about ever going to execute on his assets because, as I testified, I thought he had money. I believed he had money. I mean, he was actively making lots of money. So it was shocking to me, and it wasn't until after the murders that I really sort of put two and two together why he would do that. But that could be the why. The other part of it is that who's most likely to ask the most questions after this happens? Whether it's why Paul was there, who knows? I mean, you're talking about a sociopath and why a sociopath did what he did. But I think that in December of 20, the denial of those requests to admit indicated that he was already contemplating. And so when he told Maggie's sister, whoever did this had been planning for a long time, I think he told the truth then.
I agree with you. Less than 3 hours. Did that surprise you? The verdict?
No, it really didn't surprise me. I think when Alec got on the stand and admitted that he was at the kennels, he had compressed the timeline such that there was just no way to get away from what happened. To get away from the shots, from the dog kennels. I mean, it's just too short a time. And so as soon as they don't buy that, it's over. And it sounds like in large part that was sort of the coup de grace for his defense as well. I mean, they didn't buy. He was at the dog kennels. He had lied about being at the dog kennels repeatedly to everyone. He clearly was trying. And, if you knew Alec, you can see when you hear him, when you watch him. When I was watching him I couldn't finish watching him testify because somebody texted me and she said, he's testifying exactly like you did on he's the evil you or something like that. I mean, because he was, he was relating it to different things that had happened. And like I tried to make all the pieces fit for the jury. And when I told you a moment ago, when I referenced Danny Henderson reaching forward, I said, that's the guy. You saw him in that video. That guy is the one he had to worry about. The person that's in the car with him when he's being questioned, that's the man that was watching over everything. And so, Alec was doing the same thing. And when I would watch him, if he said, I can't remember exactly, that's a tell. He has certain phrase. I would appreciate when you hear him on the video say, I'd appreciate. It's a suggestive ask without really asking.
Was Alec afraid of Danny too? Do you think? I mean, overall,
Dan, he definitely would have been afraid of Danny finding out for sure. I mean, he would have known just like what happened. I mean, Danny, I think it was, I don't remember what Ronnie said. It was Danny and Randy, I think, that actually confront Alec and he confessed. And, whatever he said, I didn't know why it took you so long or something. But I didn't know why it took you so long to catch me, Chris. I've been stealing from you for 15 years.
But and these are like they're right next door. They're right next to him this whole time doing it. So I'm curious as to did Danny talk about it after Alec kind of gave it up? No.
I haven't talked to Danny. I can't really stress enough. I mean, you heard some of the testimony of Mark Ball and talking about brothers and family. And I mean, these people practiced law, but their families were so intertwined. I mean, they lived life almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just like family. Mm-hmm. They worked together, they played together, they ate together, they were together a lot. So, the level of betrayal is, I mean, yeah, you can't really overstate um, those feelings, I don't think, in terms of what they have to be feeling. I told Creighton Waters at one point, I said, you've got two kinds of family. You've got the family you were born with, and you got the family that you choose or that chooses you. And Alec stole from both. And it's because he mattered more than all of those people. Hakeem Pinckney is in a I'm going to call it a cut rate nursing home facility where his ventilator becomes unplugged. I mean, this is somebody who needs the money. All of the people that he stole from needed this money. Arthur Badger, that I represent, he had 6 small children from 2 to 11 years old, and their mama had died in this crash. He needed this money. Right. And, this wasn't, you're in a wreck, you get a check kind of people. And that doesn't happen anyway in the real world. This were people that were seriously in need of these funds, and he was more important. He was always more important. And if that's the person, when you put your needs, your wants, your desires, whatever in the hell it is that drove Alec, and in front of everybody, your family, that's the kind of person who would kill his family to protect himself.
Yeah. So during sentencing, Judge Newman gave you a very high compliment.
Yeah.
He referred to you as a tiger for your legal prowess. What did you think of that?
In the moment, I think his words were, with a tiger like Mark Tinsley on your tail. I can imagine what you felt. And, it was emotional for me, and for the same reason I said earlier. I knew Paul and Maggie, and even in the mind of a sociopath, to the thought that these 2 innocent people were killed because I was putting pressure on Alec. It was upsetting. And I was emotional about it. And I went back and I was emotional with the judge, and he, it's not logical. I can make a certain logic in my mind, but it's emotional. It's emotional response. We're emotional beings. I mean, we don't always think logically, and so I don't know that it's guilt that I felt. And afterwards, somebody said, "I bet you're relieved. I bet you're happy." No, I'm not happy. I feel dirty. I feel dirty is the only word that I can think of, because I'd never want to be associated with the reason that 2 innocent people are killed.
Right.
And that was the in terms of the pressure that I felt, was making sure that to begin with, that Judge Newman understood what I thought and why I thought that Alec had done it, at least this part of it. And then the jury, I wanted it was, because there's some complicated stuff, not for Judge Newman, but certainly for the jury to understand. And so, yeah, it was nice. It was a nice thing to say. And at first I thought he was talking about the fact that I said I carried an orange backpack in Carolina, but
I don't know if if a lot of people are going to catch that in the chat here, but that was it's pretty funny. Well,
so I went to Clemson, and we were Clemson Tigers. Yeah. So Clemson Tigers, and I carried an orange backpack. But no, that's not
the courtroom, by the way.
He was talking about, because.
Did you bring it into the courtroom, by the way?
No, I didn't. Yeah. But no, and when I went back, and I, because I went, as I listened to what Judge Newman said, there's a moment where I realized that I'm holding my breath. And then at the same time, I recognized that everybody in the whole courtroom is holding their breath. It's just, and he is so even keeled, so deliberate in what he's saying. And I went back and I told him, I said, "Judge, I have never heard a more articulate, powerful string of words put together than what you just said out there. And I think that because he was talking to Alec, because he had seen Alec's family. I mean, this just wasn't you had a wonderful family. This is not coming from someone who just saw their pictures blown up on the screen. He saw them at the trial lawyers convention for years and years and years.
Right.
He would have seen them in those places, and so those were the words I wish that I could have said to Alec. If I could, I couldn't have put those words together, but it was the most moving thing I think I've ever heard a person say, and it didn't appear to me he was reading anything. I mean, he was just speaking, and because he continued in when I went back into his chambers. I mean, he said, I've never had someone who'll admit it. Just the same thing he said to Alec, and then he told his wife that in fact he told her about the case that I tried, and he could imagine the pressure, and because I didn't leave any stone unturned in that other case, and clearly I wasn't gonna leave a stone unturned in this case. And I see somebody just commented about the judge losing his son, and yeah, can you imagine? Can you imagine? And I really, if it had been me, I would have had to comment on that loss. And maybe you can't. Maybe you can't because we're not equipped to deal with the loss of our own child. We just can't do it. But here's someone who suffered an incredible loss by the loss of his son right before the beginning of this trial, and here's someone who kills his son to continue to be able to steal and live whatever lifestyle it is that he's living. And I'm confident Judge Newman would have given anything to have his son back. He's just a fantastic person.
It was a swing of the pendulum, and where you could hear it not only in his admonition, but you could feel it. And I think I think the world felt it. Did you get a stare, by the way, at any time in the courtroom from him? I don't know if
the only time was when I was telling about the Hilton Head, because I was looking at him as I was saying it, looking into his eyes, and and I said when he got right in my face, he was looking at me and I was looking at him, and then towards the end of that, and I said, but I wasn't intimidated, and then he broke eye contact, and that was the only time. Creighton was pacing back and forth such. I was trying to make sure I was listening to what he said, but that was the only time he really made eye contact with me, and we stared at each other for a few seconds.
Interesting. The Netflix series told the story of what happened the night of the boat wreck and about the Murdoch dynasty. Did you think they got it right?
Well, they got some things wrong. I think the thing about the Netflix documentary is they had so much, and I believe that the people who produced that from Son of Mart are some very gifted people. What happened is after the murders, Jim Griffin, there were a number of news outlets that had requested the criminal file on the boat crash, and the AG's office wouldn't release it. And Jim Griffin made a comment that clearly that was because the boat crash was related to the murders. And Mallory's family was incensed by that. And it was that we had not given any statements to anyone. And that was what, so almost immediately on the heels of that, we sat down with 2020 and then talked to other people. But when Jenner First with Son of Mart pitched the idea, I mean, he clearly understood the whole pervasive nature um, of just what all was involved in this. I mean, you got a banker, you got Alec, you got this, all of this law enforcement involvement, um, so I think coming into it that they had the ability to tell the story um, with a whole lot more um, feel for just how pervasive everything and how interconnected everything was. I mean, everything's connected. At different times I've said there's 1,000 rabbit holes and there's a rabbit in every one. Everything's connected. And I used to, I remember when a Dateline producer called me and said there are these two PIs and they went to Sandy Smith, which was Stephen Smith's mother, and they got her iPad and they broke it. And I thought, wow, that was terrible. But I don't think that's got anything to do with my case. Well, it did. And I just didn't know about it yet. I just didn't know the why. And so, the one thing I learned was to not dismiss anything and try, and which is hard to do when you've got people from all over the world sending you information, some good, some bad. I mean, for instance, the picture that I used of Buster and John Marvin in the Las Vegas casino gambling. Somebody sent me that, and I used that to have the judge appoint a receiver in the case.
Yeah, they made a phone call. They made a phone call about that. And
anonymous person sent me that. That's right.
Yeah, and I think he won a beef stick from the commentary.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Isn't that right?
Sure.
On the phone call?
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
He won about 6 or 8 beef sticks. He said, "You'd be proud of me."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I couldn't miss the opportunity.
But I think that was what they were going for, and then maybe Netflix didn't quite think that people would understand. I mean, it's been a big success, as I understand it, in terms of people watching it. I think they did a good job with the story they told. I just think they had the ability to tell a bigger story, and maybe they're going to come back and do some more episodes. I don't know. The difficulty, and you've referenced it without referencing it, but lawyers, there are rules on pretrial publicity and what we can talk about before a case, and generally speaking, we can't talk about much, but we can try to correct the record. If Jim Griffin goes on and says clearly this is related to they think that someone involved in the boat crash is the suspect, we can go talk about that. But social media, with bots and fake accounts and trolls and I mean, sometimes you sound like a conspiracy nut, but I'm just telling you, it's real.
It's real.
And they're there. And you can go to some of these closed groups and there's people just pounding away who are being paid to do it, who may or may not be real. There are different firms where you have this AI bots that are responding to these things.
Can you answer this question? What about the paper you whipped out?
So when the case starts on Tuesday, Creighton has me come because he thinks that there's going to be a proffer then. I think I'm right. And when Dick comes in the courtroom and Dick sees me, Dick already knows. Dick's read my testimony in front of the state grand jury. So Dick knows what I'm going to say. And they had filed a motion that day, which Dick sort of interrupts. And it was interesting because Creighton and Jim are arguing about a motion, and then Dick just interrupts and starts to argue the motion directed at me. And they had written this memo, and I read the memo. And when I read the memo, I knew they didn't know about the order. So I printed off the order and I showed Creighton that morning. And I said, don't ask me about it. Don't ask me anything that even gets close to this. Cause he's going to go there. And it was tough. It was tough holding it as long as I held it. And I waited and just tried to wait on the right time. Because I didn't didn't want to miss the opportunity. But no, I knew where they were coming from. You know, it sucks to be predictable, but I could see where he was coming from, and it was a tough questioning.
Yeah. Oh, it was a classic moment. I think everybody jumped out of their chair. Yeah. I think it was perfect. I'm just trying to figure out who's going to play you in the movie, you know, in the big screen, right? You know, we're gonna, guys, who do you, just in chat, who do you think is going to play Mark on the big screen here when Hollywood gets a hold of this whole thing here? Bradley Cooper. There you go. There, he's a Bradley Cooper guy.
Yeah, Clooney probably is got enough of a comical side he could do it. I think those other actors they suggested were too serious.
What's your 4 dogs' names?
So I've got Peanut, who's a boykin. I've got Bear, Daisy, and Bella. And Peanut is Peanut's the one that's, I don't know, people have seen it. She's gone to court with me a couple of times. When I heard him say the words about taking down the on the portrait, at first I thought that he was taking it down because of a concern that someone would feel intimidated by this, the impact of this influence and of who they were. But when I heard the judge, I really got the sense that he had taken down the portrait to ensure that Alec got a fair trial. So, and maybe it could be for both reasons, because he said it was for both reasons. But it never dawned on me that he would take it down because someone could, or this jury could possibly hold it against Alec that he had come from this position of influence. And I think that was really the point of what he was saying. You know, here you had you had everything. You had a beautiful family. You had a family who and I think that their family had done a lot of good. I mean, I don't know about. I've never heard a rumor that, well, they concocted evidence or they sent this person to the electric chair for I mean, the murder cases that I've heard that Alec's grandfather prosecuted or even that his father prosecuted, they were some pretty serious murders. I mean, there wasn't any fabrication there, but I just got the sense that it was you had everything. You've come from this position. I mean, you're a lawyer, and I don't know that the world holds lawyers to different standard, but lawyers hold lawyers to different standards. And we're entrusted with everything, with people's lives, with people's livelihoods, and to abuse that power to mar and the system of ours and the way that he has done and be such a stain on our profession. He really hurt a lot of people that we will never know about because of it. Well, so what I said to begin with, I mean, you take Hakeem Pinckney, or you take Donna Badger, who died in this crash with UPS. I mean, you don't have to stretch those facts. I mean, what Alec would do is, if you had a case with Alec, he might not return your calls, and then you're on, Sunday night, tomorrow we're going to have a roster meeting. Your case is on the roster. You don't think that Alec's ready to try the case because you haven't heard from Alec. He won't return your calls. And so suddenly Monday morning he says, Chris, guess what? I'm ready to go. And so he would do that sort of power play and use it to his advantage. But no, I mean, I think for the most part, the cases that he was stealing these funds from, they were those cases. The facts spoke for themselves. I mean, you got terrible deaths and horrible injuries, and
so there was one question about the GoFundMe. Yeah, can you speak to that, or are you allowed to, or is it okay?
I have seen people suggest that there was something improper. I mean, clearly Phil Barber suggested that there was something improper. Shelley Smith was only subpoenaed by the state. And you heard Judge Newman at one point say that once they get off the stand, they're released from their subpoena. So it's complete hogwash that, oh, she's under subpoena. That's what Dick was trying to get Phil Barber to argue. Oh, she was under subpoena. She wasn't under any subpoena from them. She wasn't even on their witness list. She was on the state's witness list, and she had been subpoenaed to testify by the state. So that would be the first thing. If I had been asking Shelley Smith the questions, and my wife was sitting there, and I said, he needs to ask her or say, you're afraid, aren't you? This woman, I mean, I was in the courtroom when she testified, and tears were streaming down her face. And you could tell she was terrified.
Yeah, she was.
And, you know, I mean, I was moved. I was really moved by the fact that she was essentially working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to take care of her grandchildren and her family. And, you know, so I wanted to help her. Renee Beach shared, not necessarily to me, she just shared it on Facebook, the GoFundMe. I saw it. I donated. And then somebody quickly said, oh, Mark Tinsley donated. I didn't think anything about it. I really wasn't trying to hide it, but I made it anonymous after that. I'm not ashamed of what I did. I would,
No,
you know, I'm
out of your
glad
heart.
a lot of other people. Yeah, you know, I mean, she was a nice lady. She was deserving. I was moved, not by what she said, but just what she was willing to do and go through in that moment. But I was mainly moved by the fact that she was tirelessly working to take care of her family, and she was jeopardizing that by getting up there and testifying. And you know, I felt for her, so I gave her $1,000.
Good for you.
I'd give her $1,000 again. And you know, and I think that much to Judge Newman's dismay, they didn't ask me about that on the stand, because he said it'll be interesting fodder on cross-examination. I think he was hoping they would ask me, but they didn't ask me. I was hoping they would ask me.
Well, I mean, that just shows what kind of person you are. I mean, here's a wonderful soul who you could tell. I mean, her body language would just spoke volumes. She was just so, because she was trapped. She was trapped. I mean, he put her in a really bad situation. Was there not a life insurance policy Alex Buster Collect mentioned Mark in his first testimony? There wasn't.
There was not. There wasn't. You know, and so just so people understand, I mean, when the receivers were appointed by the court, if there are a couple of different kinds of life insurance. One could be a whole life policy, which would have value, and the role of the receivers was essentially to marshal, to pull together all of Alec's assets. And so we had looked for the life insurance for that reason, to see if he had life insurance. We couldn't find it. I'm told that Dick subpoenaed to try to find life insurance, and Dick couldn't find it. Now, I thought it was interesting on the cross-examination of Ryan Kelly, the SLED agent, by Dick. Dick never once said suicide. He never once said life insurance. You heard it in the audio recording from the rehab center in Atlanta, but you never heard Dick say it. Jim said it. Alec said it. But I'm just, like Mark Ball said, somebody needs to show it to me. And $12 million in life insurance. Alec was $386,000 overdrawn on his checking account. You think he was actually paying a premium, and the premium would have been substantial. He wasn't making payments on a premium. He didn't have any life insurance. That was all some more spin. Once they got caught,
mm-hmm.
I mean, it had to be, you know, he had to explain why he was doing this. Why it wasn't to cover up and say there's really a vigilante after me and my family. I was really trying to do it for the life insurance. You don't take your health insurance card when you go to try to kill yourself. I'm sorry.
What else did you think was kind of what about Stephen Smith's iPad connection to Mallory's case? Is there any truth to that, or
so
that's
so the two PIs, and that's another case. That's the outrage civil conspiracy case that I've filed on behalf of the Beach family. But they're two PIs that were working, and we've alleged to get information about at that time was about the Murdocks.
Let's see here. Are there other kids involved drinking? Oh, blah blah blah. I think that case has been resolved, and of course, I think the kids. I'll answer that one. The kids themselves have all, stood up and told the truth of what took place that night.
Well, I was going to say there's a reason that it's illegal in all 50 states to not drink until you're 21 years of age. So, I remember my grandfather was in World War II. And I remember when I was 18 complaining about if you're old enough to go into the Army or be drafted, because we still had to draft. We didn't have the draft. You still had to register, whatever that was. I remember doing that, and so I was complaining about not being able to drink. If you're old enough to go into the Army, you ought to be old enough to drink. And I'll never forget him saying, because his brother was about a year older than him, and you had to be 16 to join the Army. And my great grandmother, they lied on his, whatever it is, the application. I don't think it would be an application, but they wrote the wrong date. So, because he was only 15, and he went to North Africa, probably 16 or 17, and till the war ended, and he was in North Italy. And he said that the reason that they send kids is because by the time you're 30 or 40, you wouldn't get off the boat. You know enough, and that's the reality of alcohol. I mean, no drunk person has ever got in a car and said, today's the night I'm going to run into somebody.
Right.
It's not going to happen to me. And kids do not have the life experiences to know the consequence of their action. Now, but go and look at when we changed the law from 18 to 21 and just how many deaths, highway deaths related to alcohol, how they decreased. And then the other part of that is Mallory has paid her share of that responsibility.
Alcohol destroys lives. That's the bottom line. Right. And all right, my friend, is there anything I haven't added? Whoop, wait a minute. I've got two more up here. This one is more of a comment. Thank you, Mimi. You're awesome. And this one, Mark, any thoughts on Harpootlian saying he was honored to represent a man lawyer who had admittedly stolen and hurt so many people? That's kind of a interesting question.
Well, I think what he said was he was honored because he was innocent. I mean, I will say this about Dick. Dick truly believes in the system that we have, and that everyone is presumed to be innocent until proven to be guilty. And so I have a lot of respect for what Dick does. I don't necessarily respect all the ways that Dick does it, but it wasn't effective here. It could be effective somewhere else. I think Dick's a great lawyer. And I think that he brings a lot to the table for his clients. But, the evidence was, you've got a liar who is at the kennels within seconds of when his family was murdered. I don't care what lawyer you have. They're not going to be able to.
So I'm going with this one. I'm going George Clooney's going to play you.
We'll have to do this again when I have a better internet.
No, you're good. My friend, the fact that you did this on your anniversary, just again, you're a man of your word. You're a great man. And by the way, everybody hit that thumbs up button for him, and make sure, you pass this on to your social media accounts, on behalf of Mark. And well, I can't wait to see you in action, coming up here. I want to say personally, it's a great privilege to, meet you personally and to call you a friend now. And hopefully I can get you back here. Maybe I can get you back with that other Tasmanian devil.
Yeah, I won't get to say anything if you bring Eric on here for sure.
He's married way up. I saw your Facebook thing, and just, you've outstepped yourself on this one, brother. Good for you.
Yeah, I think we both have. They're the ones that actually set this up, by the way.
Okay. Yes. And just so everybody knows, our wives were talking to each other, and my people were talking to his people, and we got it done. So, okay. I'm going to get out of here, and, we're going to go to Hawaii when you're done. So, Mark, again, thank you so much for being a guest on the interview room. And it's so great to get to know you. And we're going to do this again. We look forward to it. I'm going to step out, and you've got close to just under 8,000 people on this live here tonight watching you. So you've got the final word from.
I think the thing that the Beach family wants everybody to know is that all of the people that have reached out, their thoughts and prayers, they really mean a lot, and they're very much appreciated, and they've helped these people get through an incredibly difficult time, and they've helped me. I mean, a lot of people have reached out to me as well, and your appreciation for the work that we've done to try to help this family get some level of accountability is very much appreciated. And so I thank you, and nice talking with you.